Day one of the 2019 federal election campaign already coming to a close, and already some big issues have made their way to the top of the agenda. So who better to unpack the beginning of a 40-day stretch than At Issue? You're going to see them a lot. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal, Andrew Coyne is in Toronto, and Althea Raj is in Ottawa tonight. Let's start with some of the issues that dominated day one. Because of the Globe and Mail story about the RCMP looking into doing further talks or interviews with some of the people involved in the SNC-Lavalin affair. Let me show you a little bit of how Justin Trudeau responded to those questions today.
We gave out the largest and most expansive waiver of cabinet confidence in Canada's history.
That was all he said in response to a question about the waiver that he gave lifting cabinet confidentiality. Here's what Andrew Scheer had to say early this morning.
He has looked Canadians in the eye and said things that he knew was not true, and we made the case that he has lost the moral authority to govern.
This happens as the Globe and Mail reports that Jody Wilson-Raybould was interviewed by the RCMP just yesterday. Chantal, what do we make of the fact that this is just back in the headlines, that this is where we are starting day one of the campaign?
I think it forced everyone, but especially the Conservatives and the Liberals, off script in the sense that this isn't what they had prepared for. I don't believe the Conservatives plan to spend the bulk of any part of today on SNC-Lavalin because they felt that they had pushed that envelope as far as it could go. I still believe that that is the case, except that events do what they do. And I think for both of them, especially Mr. Trudeau, who wanted a clean lunch and didn't get it out of it, it's a wasted campaign day.
And it's probably telling, Andrew, that I mean, part of the way Justin Trudeau was trying to shut it down was keeping those answers to a sentence when he was asked any question, in hopes that that would be the end of it. And presumably it would have, had we not been told this information by the Globe tonight.
Well, he never looks good when he's discussing this issue for whatever reason. And when you retreat into canned talking points and not particularly convincing ones, i.e., the clerk of the Privy Council made the decision when it is absolutely up to the Prime Minister if he chooses to waive that confidentiality requirement. When you've got the RCMP involved, I think we're in a little bit different situation than we might have been previously. If the RCMP is involved, it's because at least they think there's at least a possibility that a crime was committed. If there's a possibility that a crime was committed, surely to God, we would want to have all of the evidence available to the RCMP. Maybe it's exonerating everybody involved, but we would want to have all of the evidence involved. So the question now becomes, why on earth won't he allow that confidentiality requirement to be waived? And I don't think that issue is going to go away anytime soon, actually.
No, but it's unclear to me still at the end of this day, Althea, who it has to be waived for. Who it doesn't apply to, what more we need to understand. I mean, I have questions after today about how that applies, you know, and maybe I won't get the answers to those questions, but how do you think the day unfolded?
Well, I agree there's a lot of unanswered questions. Like, it's unclear what does Jody Wilson-Raybould or Jane Philpott want to say, because there are people quoted in the story that they are not able to talk about, or what circumstances do they want to shed light on that they are unable to talk about because of the limits of this cabinet confidence waiver. That being said, I agree with Chantal. This completely thwarted both of the Conservatives and the Liberals' campaigns on day one. The Prime Minister is in British Columbia this evening. He's going to be in Victoria tomorrow, holding a media availability. Probably the reporters there will not be asking about the policy announcements that the Liberals want to make. They will be asking about Jody Wilson-Raybould, whose writing is just, you know, across the water in Vancouver, Grenville, about what she has just said to the Globe. And so that will, again, mean that the Prime Minister is answering questions on things that he really is trying to, you know, with his short answers, starve them of oxygen. Yeah. And if we'll recall, like, when the Conservatives back in the spring started peaking, it was because of the SNC-Lavalin affair. And that's clearly where the Tories want to go. But it's interesting that, you know, Trois-Rivières was probably not the place that they wanted to have this conversation today for the Tories.
I'm not convinced. I
Yeah.
am not convinced at all that that is where the Conservatives either want to go or should go. Because if they were going to be able to grab back that peak moment that they had in the spring, it would have happened, or at least some form of it, when the Ethics Commissioner reported. I would also caution, and I guess the RCMP would caution itself about going about the crime thing, having watched the kind of catastrophe that the RCMP ran itself into with the Mike Duffy affair.
Yes.
Where big words were also used only for egg to be on the face of the police. So yes, we can have this. I know that there are people in Ottawa who are saying, well, this is, becoming a conversation amongst people who are into this story. It could be that both the Liberals but also the Conservatives will be testing the patience of voters if that is where this story, along with the media, is going to take the election for the first week.
Okay, Andrew, last point, and then I'm going to change topics. Go ahead.
We heard that in the spring as well, and it didn't prove to be the case. It did actually seem to have legs. I think I agree that you don't, if the Conservatives, you don't want to spend all your time on this specific issue.
No.
But I think it has resonance beyond the details of SNC-Lavalin. It has issues, it has relevance and resonance with regard to the Prime Minister's personal credibility, and that can be very damaging to the Liberals. And it has also relevance and resonance when we're talking about one of the Tory messages, which is that somehow the issue, the system is rigged, the well-connected get ahead, and you folks don't. It plays to that constituency as well.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to put that on pause. And really, the reason we're talking about it because it's in the headlines again. I don't know how long it's going to last any more than any of you. But another topic, which is also an important one that sort of took part of the first day of election, was Quebec's secularism bill, Law 21, Bill 21. Have a listen to what the three Conservatives, the Liberals, and the NDP had to say about that.
I have been watching very closely the process and considering the federal potential actions. And at this time, I feel it would be counterproductive for the federal government to engage in this process.
I've made my views on Bill 21 known. It's not something that our government would, our party would ever consider at the federal level.
I'm hoping that my presence in Quebec, as someone who clearly has a turban, has a beard, maybe some nice long hair as well, is a way to show people that, hey, listen, I believe in fighting for your identity.
So later today, the Quebec Premier, Premier Legault, called on all federal leaders to promise that they wouldn't be involved in any legal challenges. I'll start with you on this, Althea. Do you think that this is an issue that does have legs that we will keep talking about through the campaign?
Absolutely. I think this has the potential of being the niqab issue that we had in the 2015 campaign, whereas parties are forced, like I'm sure all the party leaders are going to be asked for their position, whether they would if they would leave the door open to appealing this, or if they would firmly shut it down, which we had previously heard from the Tories. I don't know if they still have that position or not, where sometimes the leader's position, you think you might know it in Quebec or in the rest of the country, and then you realize that the position is perhaps not what you thought. We saw that with Mr. Mulcair and the NDP candidates that were not singing from the same songbook, and that really hurt the NDP in 2015. I think that has the potential of hurting the Conservatives. Less so the NDP, but a big boost to the Bloc, which really believes that Ottawa should butt out. And the Prime Minister left the door open, which was smart tactically, I think.
I don't disagree that the Liberals' take on this today was probably the right place to be nationwide, but it's not necessarily a great day when you draw François Legault out to ask you to cease and desist on the first day of the campaign. Now, that being said, what Andrew Scheer did say in his news conference in response to questions that the Conservative government would not participate in the challenge of Bill 21. And Jagmeet Singh has insisted that he dislikes the bill intensely, and you heard what he had to say, but that he believed that it was the prerogative of the National Assembly. So far, it looks like the only one who has left the door open to participating eventually in a court case is Justin Trudeau.
And Andrew, does he have any choice but to leave the door open, given how he has presented himself on these issues in the past?
Yeah, I mean, I'm grading on a curve here, but he was by far the best response among the party leaders. It is to their collective shame that they have not been stronger on this. This is a real challenge to, I think, our moral identity as a people in Canada, that if we're going to sit by and simply say it's none of our affair, if any province decides they're going to essentially segregate their public service by religion and, let's be frank, also effectively by race, that is not something that we should really be tolerating as a country. Now, I grant that all of the leaders are tiptoeing around this because they want to win seats in Quebec and because it is popular in the province. But amongst them, at least the Prime Minister was willing to say, leave open the possibility of a federal intervention in this, and that was certainly better than nothing.
Okay, I'm going to leave with one thought from you all. I don't know if long, but whether there was something that surprised you today or something that you said to yourself, okay, well, I'm going to watch that closely. This is going to shape the next 40 days. Maybe it's this thing we talked about. Maybe it's not. Althea.
I thought that the Green campaign would be perhaps a little bit more professional off the top. They had their own curveball with comments from Pierre Nantel about whether or not he's a separatist and whether or not the the Green Party makes room for a separatist member of Parliament. And Ms. May's answer on that question was a bit wishy-washy and didn't align with what the party had said the day before. So,
Yeah. Andrew?
I was struck by how weak both Trudeau's and Scheer's response to the Globe story on SNC-Lavalin was. Granted, it came out last night, but that gave them several hours to prepare, and neither of them, I think, were particularly strong or impressive in their responses to it.
Chantal?
I thought that the NDP launch was on point and probably more of the kind of discourse that people would have expected from the Greens, the Conservatives, and the Liberals, who I thought wasted their launch. And looking at it from this province, I think the Bloc Québécois, not only by its own devices, but because of the others, had a great day.
Thank you all, and I'll see you back here tomorrow night.